The courtroom was packed so tightly that the air itself felt heavy with expectation. Every bench overflowed with bodies squeezed shoulder to shoulder, faces drawn tight with worry, fascination, or morbid curiosity. The soft hum of whispers danced beneath the fluorescent lights as journalists lined the back row, notebooks open, pens poised with predatory anticipation. This was not just another legal proceeding. This was the unraveling of one of the most shocking betrayals ever to come out of reality television. Every eye fixed on the center of the courtroom, where the thick tension seemed to coil like smoke. At the plaintiff's table sat Janelle Brown, her hands folded neatly in her lap. On the surface, she looked calm, almost serene, but anyone who knew her understood that beneath that collected exterior lay a storm years in the making. Decades of manipulation, lies, and financial deceit were finally being dragged into the light. Beside her, Meri Brown sat rigid, her shoulders tight, her lips pressed into a thin, unforgiving line. This case was not simply about legal justice. It was about reclaiming voices that had been silenced, about facing down the ghosts of a fractured family. Across the room, at the defense table, sat Kody and Robyn Brown. Kody, once the self-appointed patriarch whose confidence filled every room he entered, now looked remarkably diminished. The trademark arrogance he flaunted on television had withered into nervous fidgeting. His fingers drummed a frantic rhythm against the polished wood table, a telltale tic he could no longer suppress. Robyn, forever the image of trembling fragility, dabbed softly at her eyes with a tissue. But the audience of onlookers, seasoned by years of watching the family's melodrama unfold on screen, was not fooled by her delicately crumpled sorrow. Whatever sympathy she once commanded had evaporated long ago. The sharp crack of the gavel snapped through the courtroom like a lightning strike. The no-nonsense, 60-year-old judge scanned the room over the rim of her glasses, silencing every whisper without uttering a word. When she spoke, her voice was firm and unwavering. "Mrs. Brown, you may continue your testimony." Janelle rose, inhaling deeply, her resolve visibly hardening. She had waited for this moment. Her voice, strong and clear, cut through the room as she faced the judge. "Kody and Robyn misled all of us," she began, her tone steady, unshaking. "They told us everything they did was for our benefit. They convinced us we were building a future together, equally. But we now know the truth." A murmur rippled through the courtroom like a soft breeze stirring leaves. Kody's posture stiffened, his jaw tightened. Those who once adored him as the center of a large, unconventional family were now staring with looks that bordered on contempt. Janelle gestured toward the towering stack of documents her attorney had prepared. "We built our lives on the promise that everything would be divided fairly, that our sacrifices would be shared. But instead, Kody and Robyn siphoned family funds to create a lifestyle for themselves, while the rest of us struggled." Meri shifted closer, her expression darkening with each word. When Janelle spoke again, her voice carried a razor-sharp edge. "You kept telling us we didn't have enough, that sacrifices were necessary. Yet all the while, you were funneling money into your personal accounts. You financed a luxury home for Robyn. You funded her life while telling us ours didn't matter." Robyn's grip tightened on her tissue, breath shaky. Kody's hands curled into white-knuckled fists. The plaintiff's attorney stood, placing a neatly organized folder on the judge's bench. "Your Honor, these are bank statements, records showing deposits made into an account managed exclusively by Kody and Robyn Brown." The judge flipped through the pages slowly. The only sound in the courtroom was the soft, deliberate rustling of paper. Kody's complexion drained as he realized the unavoidable truth now lay in plain sight. The judge finally looked up, eyes sharp. "Mr. Brown, can you explain these transactions?" Kody swallowed hard, searching for air. "It's a misunderstanding," he stammered. "The decisions I made were for the family's benefit. There were issues." Meri's chair screeched across the floor as she sprang to her feet. "No." The single word echoed like a gavel strike. Her voice trembled with restrained fury. "Kody, this wasn't for the family. This was for you and Robyn. You left us in the dark. You took our money. You built a life with her while the rest of us were left scrambling. Robyn finally snapped, her voice trembling but indignant. That's not fair. You're making it sound like we stole from you. Janelle turned sharply, her eyes blazing. You did steal from us. A low murmur began to rise among spectators, but the judge lifted her hand for silence. The attorney presented another document. We also have evidence of Kody stating explicitly that Robyn's needs come first. He used this reasoning to justify multiple transfers. Meri closed her eyes briefly, emotion flooding her features. She had suspected this for years, but hearing the words aloud reopened wounds she had tried desperately to heal. The judge turned her attention back to Kody. Mr. Brown, do you deny this statement? Kody leaned back, lips pressed together, refusing to answer. The silence that followed was suffocating. When the judge finally spoke, her verdict was decisive. I find that Mr. and Mrs. Brown have presented false facts to this court. These financial dealings were fraudulent. You will face the appropriate consequences. Gasps exploded throughout the room. Kody sagged in his seat. Robyn's mouth hung open in stunned disbelief. But Janelle and Meri exchanged a quiet, victorious glance. The truth had finally clawed its way into the open. Yet this courtroom victory was only the beginning of the story. A shift into Robyn's new life in the aftermath. Robyn Brown's life took a strange turn. After years of defending plural marriage as a sacred principle, she suddenly abandoned the lifestyle entirely. Now she embodied the image of a traditional, almost retro wife, devoted solely to Kody. She lived with him in a lavish $2.1 million mansion, wearing vintage-style floral dresses and spending her days caring for their children. Matching David Yurman rings gleamed on their hands, signaling a bond she clung to with fierce determination. Robyn had once championed independence and shared sisterhood. Now she embraced an identity that felt unmistakably rooted in the 1950s, a time romanticized by many but remembered by others for its suffocating expectations placed upon women. Even her habits, decorating her home with porcelain dolls, filling rooms with ornate nostalgia, reflected a longing for a simpler, more tightly controlled life. This dramatic shift raised questions. Was she truly content, or desperately clinging to the only role left to her? The fragility behind the fantasy television viewers began noticing cracks in Robyn's carefully curated facade. On camera, she admitted quietly, "Sometimes things go wrong in paradise." Her voice was soft, almost pleading. Though she presented herself as a devoted, old-fashioned wife, the dynamic between her and Kody seemed strained. They bickered over small things. Kody appeared resentful, distant, nothing like the partner she had envisioned when she claimed him as her one and only monogamous husband. The tragic death of his son, Garrison Brown, cast an even darker shadow over his behavior. His grief manifested in mood swings, frustration, and disconnection. Robyn tried, perhaps too hard, to keep their household together, but the emotional burden was immense. And though Robyn contributed financially through sister wives, her spending habits added tension. Stories circulated about her accumulating over $30,000 in credit card debt before joining the Brown family, and her more recent splurges, like the infamous $70,000 doll collection, drew concern and criticism. Some speculated she was filling emotional voids with impulse purchases. Others wondered whether Kody, in guilt or desperation, enabled the spending to maintain a fragile peace. Commentary from inside the family. Gwendolyn Brown, Kody and Christine's daughter, offered blunt insights in a video. She claimed Robyn needed someone emotionally stable, someone who could handle life's challenges without crumbling. Someone Kody no longer seemed capable of being. Kody was meant to be the rock of their traditional marriage. Instead, he was drifting, haunted, volatile, unsure of himself. And Robyn, for all her devotion, appeared to be living in a carefully constructed fantasy held together with fraying threads. On the surface, she had everything: beautiful children, designer jewelry, a luxurious home, the husband she fought to keep. But beneath the glamour was a woman trying desperately to maintain control in a world that continued slipping through her fingers. The judge's gavel cracked sharply through the silence. Reminder that the chaos unfolding in front of her was still, technically, a legal proceeding. But the room felt nothing like a courtroom now. It felt like a crime scene where the truth was the only body left on the floor. Kody sat rigid, shoulders locked, lips pulled tight in the familiar expression of a man who had run out of stories, but wasn't ready to admit it. His attorney leaned toward him in a whisper that carried just enough urgency to be heard by those nearby. "Stop reacting. You're giving them everything they need." But Kody couldn't help himself. Every testimony, every photo presented, every ledger page revealed, chipped away at the version of himself he had spent decades carefully constructing. Christine watched him with a stare so sharp it could peel varnish off wood. For years she had tried to understand him, tried to rationalize the contradictions between his public speeches and private failures, but watching him now, jaw clenched, eyes darting, emotional armor cracking, she realized the truth was simpler than she ever allowed herself to admit. He had never been overwhelmed or confused or misunderstood. He had been calculated. Every decision, every omission, every manipulation had been intentional. And now all the wives who once buffered him, defended him, and absorbed his chaos were done cushioning him. They were witnesses now. They were evidence. Meri's hands trembled in her lap, but not from fear. It was anger. Old, bruised, layered anger that had never been allowed to breathe. She looked at the judge, then at the gallery, then finally at Kody. "He made me feel guilty for asking basic questions," she said. Her voice didn't break, it hardened. "He made me believe I was ungrateful when I was simply trying to understand why the money never matched what he claimed." The courtroom leaned in. Even Robyn, quiet, cornered, shrinking, kept her eyes glued to the ground, bracing for impact. Then the accountants returned to the stand with the precision of surgeons. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't dramatize their words. They didn't need to. Quietly, methodically, they unraveled years of financial patterns that painted a story more damning than any emotional testimony. Coded deposits. Transfers disguised as reimbursements. Properties shuffled between LLCs that only Kody had access to. Expenses labeled as family necessities that turned out to be luxury purchases tied only to one household. The pattern wasn't careless. It wasn't accidental. It was architectural. Kody's attorney objected repeatedly, but even she seemed to be losing faith. Her objections sounded more like reflex than strategy. The judge overruled each one with the same calm tone, as though she had expected these maneuvers long before they were made. Janelle wiped her eyes, not out of sorrow, but out of vindication. "Every time I asked where the money was going," she said, "he told me I was being dramatic, or controlling, or selfish. He told me I didn't understand the system." She looked at the judge. But there was no system. There was only him. The courtroom exhaled, a collective realization that this wasn't just a story of mismanaged funds or marital collapse. It was an ecosystem designed to orbit one man, and the gravitational pull was finally failing. What remained were the fragments. Women rebuilding their legs after years of emotional amputation, children trying to understand how the foundation of their lives had been engineered on uneven ground, and Kody, sitting in the debris of a kingdom built on half-truths. The judge leaned back in her chair, studying him with a mix of curiosity and fatigue. "Mr. Brown," she said softly, "this is no longer simply about money. This is about trust, accountability, and the damage inflicted when leadership turns into exploitation." The words hung heavy in the air. Kody's throat twitched, but nothing came out. For once, he had no script. And for the first time in years, the courtroom felt like the one place where the truth finally outranked him. Emotional trauma has a strange way of reshaping a person from the inside out. It bends perspective, alters behavior, and forces people to confront the realities they've spent years avoiding. For Robyn, even while living in what Kody heralded as the perfect wife lifestyle, the emotional weight has finally begun to show. Her once bright optimism has dimmed. Her eyes don't sparkle the way they used to. The truth is simple. The traditional wife facade, the 1950s-style homemaker ideal she was promised, no longer fits the world she's actually living in. Dependence on a man, on one man who is inconsistent, volatile, and stubborn, is not just exhausting, it's dangerous. When the relationship falters or the emotional support collapses, what does a woman really have left? Traditional life can be fulfilling for some, but like any relationship model, it comes with risks. And for Robyn, the cracks have grown too wide to ignore. Whatever she once believed, whatever she once hoped, she now carries a quiet heaviness that suggests she is no longer living the happily ever after she imagined. Meanwhile, the other women who once orbited around Kody's control have chosen wildly different paths. Janelle has surged forward with the ambition and tenacity of Mad Men's Peggy Olson, combining grit with intelligence as she builds her new business, Tateparm. Like Joan Harris, she's blunt, assertive, and no longer willing to shrink herself to make room for anyone else's ego. Her life with her new husband, David Woolley, reflects a fresh chapter, one grounded in mutual respect rather than emotional negotiation. Meri, too, is stepping into her own evolution. She's shed the shell of self-doubt and emotional dependency that once defined her, blossoming into a more confident, daring version of herself. With encouragement from someone who truly supports her, she has become less like the timid Trudy Campbell of early seasons and more like the empowered version of herself audiences always hoped she would become. These women have stepped out of the past. They are not waiting for Kody's approval. They are not clinging to outdated ideals. They are building lives that reflect who they are, finally, fully, and unapologetically. But Kody and Robyn remain firmly stuck in a fantasy that no longer aligns with reality. Their idealized 1950s-era world, a world built on obedience, gender roles, and rigid family structures, has crumbled at its foundations. Their vision for Coyote Pass, the dream that was supposed to unify the entire family, has instead become a monument to indecision, conflict, and wasted potential. Janelle and Meri still care deeply about the land. They see its value and want closure. Yet Kody resists, holding out, procrastinating, insisting on control while refusing to make practical decisions. With every season that passes, the unresolved tension surrounding Coyote Pass grows heavier, more dramatic, and more symbolic of everything wrong in the family dynamic. Even as Kody claims that his overwhelming love for Robyn is what drove the other wives and children away, the truth is far more complex. His narrative positions him as the victim, as the misunderstood martyr surrounded by ungrateful ex-wives, but the pattern of emotional manipulation and refusal to accept responsibility has become too clear to ignore. What once looked like leadership now looks like avoidance. What once passed as confidence now reads as ego. And what once appeared to be a harmonious plural marriage has been revealed as a system built on hierarchy, favoritism, and denial. In contrast, Kody Brown stands like a beacon of hope and transformation. Since leaving Kody, she has become one of the most positive, uplifting personalities in the entire Sister Wives franchise. Her new marriage to David Woolley radiates warmth and mutual respect. Her social media presence, her business ventures, her glowing joy, all of it reflects a woman who finally reclaimed her sense of worth. Kody's willingness to sell her stake in Coyote Pass for a mere $10 was not a gesture of defeat, but a bold declaration of independence. Her freedom was worth more than any piece of land. She chose peace over property, self-respect over drama, and growth over stagnation. For many fans, her presence offers exactly what the show needs: a fresh energy, a new perspective, and a reminder that happiness is possible after leaving a toxic environment. Her Airbnb ventures, including a breathtaking apartment in Moab surrounded by red cliffs and world-class hiking trails, represent a future built on experience, adventure, and joy. Even her son Payton, often known for his tough exterior, has softened around her, revealing the strength and warmth of their mother-son bond. Kody's storyline is not only inspiring, it has breathed new life into the series. She embodies the courage to start over, the power to confront fear, and the determination to reclaim one's identity after years of emotional compromise. Meanwhile, tension between Kody and Robyn continues to dominate their storyline, but it has grown stale and repetitive. Their arguments lack growth, their conflicts never resolve, and Kody's unwillingness to take accountability drives the narrative in circles. Reality TV thrives on conflict, yes, but it also thrives on evolution, and neither Kody nor Robyn seems capable of offering that anymore. If anything, their dynamic weighs down the series, overshadowing the possibilities for richer, more meaningful storytelling. Janelle's arc, however, offers promise. Since leaving Kody in 2022, she has been focusing on mental well-being, entrepreneurship, and rebuilding her life on her own terms. Now living in North Carolina, she is working hard to shape her own future. Partnering with her daughter Madison, she recently made a bold real estate purchase that symbolizes a fresh start. Her motto, "Talk more, argue less," reflects a maturity and grace developed through years of emotional turbulence. She knows there may be a battle ahead over Coyote Pass, but she is preparing with both emotional strength and strategic clarity. Her self-care routine, including sessions in an infrared sauna, is more than relaxation. It is survival. Janelle openly admits her stress levels have been high as she juggles her new business, family responsibilities, and the lingering conflict with Kody and Robyn. Sweating it out in the warm, glowing light gives her space to breathe again, space she never had during the chaos of polygamy. Her Instagram posts, showing her reclining in calming red and purple lights, reveal a woman taking control of her health in a way she had never prioritized before. And it's paying off. Since completing a detox in January, she sleeps better, feels better, and manages her stress with newfound clarity. But improvement doesn't erase hardship. Her struggles with Kody remain a major source of anxiety. The unresolved land dispute, the emotional weight of the family split, and the pressure of launching a new business. All of these have taken a toll. Add to that the joy and responsibility of welcoming her new granddaughter, and the pressure in Janelle's life becomes even clearer. Yet she pushes forward, determined to build something stable, something meaningful, something hers. For Janelle, the sauna is more than a luxury. It's a weapon. A moment of reset. A space where she regains the mental strength to deal with Kody's constant resistance. After years of carrying the emotional burdens of a massive family, years of feeling unheard and undervalued, she is finally learning to prioritize herself. And in doing so, she represents another version of the show's future: resilience, rebirth, and the power of choosing oneself. With all these shifting dynamics, one thing has become painfully obvious: Sister Wives is at a crossroads. Without intervention, either from producers or the cast themselves, the show risks becoming a stagnant loop of unresolved arguments, repetitive conflict, and emotional stalemate. The magic that once made the series compelling has been overshadowed by bitterness and exhaustion. But if the narrative shifts, if it focuses on growth, healing, and transformation, the show could reinvent itself entirely. It could evolve beyond the old polygamous structure and explore the individual journeys of these women as they break free from the shadows of a fractured family. Christine's victory, Janelle's resilience, Meri's rebirth, even Robyn's reckoning. These stories have depth, authenticity, and heart. And Kody, whether he chooses to evolve or remain stuck in the past, his presence will forever represent the consequences of refusing to change. Christine may be the one who left, but she is also the one who rose. She shows us that fear can be conquered, that happiness can be rebuilt, and that life can become beautiful again after years of darkness. In the end, the future of Sister Wives depends not on Kody's vision, but on the women who finally stepped into their own power. And as long as they continue growing, healing, and redefining their lives, viewers will follow. Because this show, at its core, has always been about transformation. And now, more than ever, it is time to tell the stories of those who found the courage to walk into the light. The courtroom had become less a place of law and more a battlefield of secrets, betrayals, and unraveling illusions. What began as a dispute over finances transformed into a full-scale reckoning of Kody's hidden life. One by one, The women he once claimed to love took the stand, and each testimony peeled back another layer of deception. Christine spoke with icy calm about years of unequal treatment, hidden accounts, and the emotional toll of always being pushed aside. Janelle followed with hard, factual clarity, detailing questionable tax filings, misreported LLC income, and decisions Kody made for the family that seemed to benefit only himself and one other woman. Meri, tired and trembling, described confusion, financial entanglement, and years of not knowing what documents had been filed under her name. But the biggest revelation struck like a hammer. The accusation that Kody had secretly maintained another romantic partnership, another wife, hidden from the rest. The courtroom gasped when this came out. Christine's face hardened. She'd been betrayed before, but this was a new depth. Janelle went pale. Meri looked like the ground had dropped beneath her. The prosecution tightened their argument. If Kody had manipulated relationships, finances, and documentation while simultaneously maintaining secret commitments, his intent to deceive was no longer speculation, it was pattern. The judge fought to maintain order as the hearing spiraled into emotionally charged territory. Christine described how money always seemed to flow toward Robyn, new house, upgrades, special privileges, while the rest of them lived in RVs, rentals, or financial strain. Lisa, leading the questioning, drew a clear line. The financial sacrifices were not shared. They were imposed. Every dollar seemed designed to protect Robyn's comfort at the expense of everyone else. The narrative grew darker as Meri confirmed that their tax returns contained inconsistencies, some filed with her name, without full consent or understanding. Years of strained finances were revealed not as innocent bookkeeping errors, but as a system crafted to benefit Kody and whoever he favored at the time. When Kody finally took the stand, he shocked even his own defense team. Against advice, he insisted on testifying. His demeanor was chilling, restrained physically, yet smirking as if he were the only one who truly understood the game. He spoke not with remorse, but with entitlement. "I did what I had to do," he said, claiming he'd been misunderstood, cornered, unappreciated. But the more he spoke, the more cracks appeared. He blamed the women, accused them of turning on him, insisted he had carried the family alone. The courtroom listened, stunned, as his testimony became less a defense and more a confession of ego, superiority, and long-practiced manipulation. Even Robyn, once the untouchable center of his world, lost her composure. She sat silent, eyes vacant, her image shattered. Her protection, financial, emotional, legal, crumbled before the judge's questions. When confronted with evidence of upgrades and preferential treatment, she had no defense. The prosecution portrayed her not just as a favored wife, but as a participant in a system that drained resources from the others. Outside the courtroom, tensions simmered. Kody sat alone on a bench, head buried in his hands, the weight of collapsing relationships finally dragging him down. The women, though shaken, had formed a united front, something he never expected. For years, he had depended on their isolation, their fear of confrontation, their desire to keep the family intact. But the courtroom changed everything. For the first time, they spoke the same truth. The family was never equal, never fair, never what he claimed it to be. The transcripts end with a sense of closure and devastation. The financial puzzle is clearer now: misfiled taxes, secret accounts, preferential spending, and potential legal liabilities. But it's the emotional truth that lands hardest. The family fell apart not because of fate, but because of a man who demanded loyalty while giving deception. The courtroom didn't just expose crimes. It exposed the cost of years spent trying to hold together a family that was built on uneven ground.